Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host Tony Cañas, and I am actually running on kind of little sleep today, but we will figure it out. Today I have with me Dave Terne. Dave, longtime actuary, recurring guest. This is either your second or your third time.
Second. This is my second.
Second time. So last time you were here to talk about emergingally.com,
Correct.
which is your DEI focused blog, and that was a super interesting conversation. So I will definitely include that in the show notes for anybody who wants to
Thank you.
to watch that one. That is episode 373, and basically we are recording on September 7th, 2023. Last week, I think last week, farmers had their big downsizing.
Yes.
And 2,400 people were affected. And I happened to be in Brazil at a conference, and didn't have my equipment with me, didn't have my camera with me, kind of thing. And I was very busy, and my LinkedIn really came alive with a lot of posts from people who had been affected or whose friends had been affected by this. And I am insurance talent Monday through Sunday, so and twice on Sunday kind of thing. So I made a video where I feel like the content was really good. The quality was not as good as I liked, but the content was really good, and the reaction was immense. It just has had a ton of views, a ton of shares, a ton of people have reached out, and they've reached out and basically said that he's been through this more than once.
Yes.
And that he would be more than open to share his experience. And I took him right up on it, and we got it scheduled. And it was actually interesting. So I sent you the schedule a podcast link, and because I am heading to the States on Monday, and I'll be in the States for most of the next couple of months. So I don't have much availability to record. So this was going to be like November. And then I'm like, no, like that doesn't make sense. Like this is a very timely topic. So I sent you the different link, and here we are recording just a few days after. So first of all, thank you for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
To talk about something that is painful, and I think that there's a lot of growth you go through, but it is painful.
Yes.
And I personally have lost a couple of jobs along the way, one of which was a layoff, but it was a layoff of one. So I think it's significantly less scary. And I specifically asked when my boss told me about it, I specifically asked, was this performance related? And they're like, no, we're pulling out of Northern California, and you happen to be the only person in Northern California. That happens when you're a field rep. Okay. But yeah, it's scary, it's painful, it's something else. So you started first almost 15 years at the same small carrier, and when we've agreed to not talk about your company
Correct.
names on your prior employers, so you spent 15 years at a small carrier. What happened from there?
So I was actually there for. It was interesting, right? It was 15 years at the carrier. I was there for the first 10, and then it was bought. Actually, it was 14 years in total. I was there for the first 10, and then it was bought. It was both companies that were in the purchase had foreign boards of directors. They're actually Scottish, and they merged. And I was in the Philadelphia office, and the other company was in the Boston office. And then over a 4-year period, they slowly closed the Philadelphia office, right? And when I finally got my papers and I finally got the, you're going, bye, see ya. In retrospect, it shouldn't have been a shock, right? But when it happens to you, it's mind-blowing. And to give some context, for where I was in my life, right? A lot of this, is I had a young child. He was 3. We were in our first house. My wife had stopped working to care for him because he needed medical attention. Um, and we were, it was just mind blowing. And at the time in the Philadelphia area, there were a lot of companies that were also letting people go, actuaries go. So I'm an actuary. And of course, in the profession, everyone said, oh, actuaries don't get, everyone needs actuaries, everyone needs actuaries. Well, here I am holding severance papers. Um, and that's how I ended up I'm now in Connecticut. And that's how I ended up in Connecticut because that was the next job. And we moved. And that was also a traumatic thing because I was born and raised in Philly. My wife was. Both our families were all in Philly. We knew nobody in Connecticut, literally no person in Connecticut. So it was all very traumatic. And there are a couple of things that I learned out of that and then out of subsequent layoffs where companies reorganized and said, yeah, we've decided not to do that anymore. Sorry, Dave. In very much kind of that situation with your Northern California. I don't know the details of the farmers situation, but where a lot of companies sit there and they go, you know what, we're not going to do that line of business. We're not going to be in that state, or we're going to close that office for efficiencies. And there really, when I think about it and I look back on it, right, there are two sides to it. Sort of the logical kind of financial side, and then the emotional side of it all. And the logical financial side, particularly in the insurance industry, everyone will land somewhere. You will land somewhere. If you're looking at this and you're a farmer's person or you've been laid off, because a couple of companies are going through that, you're gonna find something. It might take a little time, but you're gonna find something. You're gonna be okay.
It can take longer than people expect.
Yeah, that's
I think
true.
that's one of the hardest things.
That is true.
Right. So your transition from company 1 to company 2 in now in Connecticut, according to LinkedIn, that was very quick.
Yes.
That was like
I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate.
My experience on the transition from American Modern to where I was Northern California rep, and I ended up in Atlanta at Liberty. That transition took 5 months.
Yep.
And that was the most shocking part, right? The downsizing. To be honest, I had that was a personal lines role, and I had my CPCU. I had been actively chatting with other companies and even interviewing a little bit for commercial lines roles, and this was a sales manager role. My girlfriend was at a large brokerage at the time, and she had said, at a brokerage, I don't care about seeing the sales manager. Once I have the contract and I'm trained, all I care about seeing the underwriter, right? Will there always be demand for people without the pen? And I was thinking about that. I'm like, I think you're right? So I really wanted that commercial lines underwriting experience, and I had been chatting with other companies about that. So I got downsized, and I was like, oh, this is fine. Like I will have a job next week, kind of thing. And then it took 5 months.
Yep.
Which felt like I already had my CPCU. I already had 6 years of experience. Yep. I was very well connected in the industry already, and what I realized is wow, like job searching in insurance is incredibly inefficient. And now that I'm on the hiring side, now I see it. Job searching in insurance, we are bad at hiring. We're too slow. All decisions get made by committee. One of the beautiful things about the industry is we get a good amount of vacation time. Well, a good amount of vacation time means, especially towards the end of the year, I got downsized like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Once you hit Thanksgiving, there's always a decision maker out on vacation for the rest of the year, and nobody gets hired.
Right.
and that just extends things. We're not from California. I'm from Costa Rica. My girlfriend's from Ohio, and we had been in California for a couple of years. The cost of living was awful, and the time zone turned out to be a lot harder than we expected, right? So basically, her family in Eastern time, my family in Central time. Those 2 or 3 hours were hard to keep up, and right, we're far away for people to visit. So we had wanted to go back east, and the downsizing happened just before the renewal for our very expensive apartment in Berkeley. So we didn't renew, and we moved east, and because we were going into the Thanksgiving, I kept applying for jobs, but before getting a new apartment in Atlanta, basically we went on an Eastern European sabbatical. So we spent 6 weeks in Eastern Europe, basically between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And Eastern Europe is very cheap. So I was getting California unemployment. I was applying for jobs, doing interviews, by phone when possible, but really not getting much interviews because of the time of the year. And so I land back in we do Christmas in Ohio. Then I end up back in Atlanta. Renee very quickly gets a job. She interviews everywhere, goes back to the same large broker where she was, just in a better role. And I'm still looking. And so the really weird part, the reason I tell the whole story, is financially I was actually better than if we had just kept working normally, because I wasn't paying for the really expensive apartment anymore. California unemployment was fairly generous compared to the cost of living both in Eastern Europe and then in Atlanta. So I was actually ahead financially, but by month 3 I was going crazy. Like I just was not used to like there's only like I'm a gamer, but there's only so much video gaming I can do without feeling useless, right? Without feeling that I'm a house that's been in the market for too long, right? Without feeling that nobody's ever going to actually give me a job. And completely like starting to reconsider my entire life.
Yeah. I feel that.
So it was really tough.
Yeah, no.
And several people helped me out during that time. And that's why I do a lot of what I do. So yeah, I completely hear you that the emotional piece of this.
The emotional piece is the hard part. And just to finish off the financial piece, I mean, like the bit of advice I give literally to and I talk to, I kind of coach and like to mentor, as you know, through Emerging Ally and the DEI stuff that I do. But every bit of advice I give to younger folks, this gray hair comes honestly, is save your money, because the nature of the industry, the nature of the economics of the world now is you're going to get laid off at some point. And to flip over to the emotional side of it, right, is you feel like, pardon me, you feel like crap. I mean, you feel worthless. You feel, and I went through and I'm like, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? How did I do this? I felt like I have a wife and a small child. Like, how did I let them down? And even going through subsequent layoffs, you go through that period. It's like almost a grief kind of a period. And I have to always remind myself, I had nothing to do with it, right? This was like a tornado came and hit my life. It literally had nothing to do. It was this particular one was 2 boards of directors in a foreign country that had never visited the Philadelphia office, didn't know who I was or what I did, wouldn't recognize me or my name. And it had nothing to do with me. And that's sort of the first part of that. And everyone nods, but it's hard to internalize that, because you really feel like you are like, man, what did I do? And what could I have done, and all that kind of stuff. And first off, if you're going through that right now, like it's first off, it's normal to do that, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a psychologist, nor do I play one on television, but it's normal. It's normal to do that, as far as I know. And it's part of going through this. And you're okay. You're an okay person. You have a lot to give. And if the company that is getting rid of you doesn't see that, then that's their problem.
And
And a company will come along and they will see that, and you will get a job. You will be okay.
I think in the actuarial space, you guys have an advantage, which is that there's a tradition or there's an expectation, or I don't know how to refer to it, but basically when you pass a test, you generally get a raise.
Yes.
And right, basically on the actuarial side, you can have fantastic salary growth from being an analyst to
Yes.
getting
That is absolutely
your
true.
associate and then your fellowship. On the business side of insurance, or on the non-actuarial side, that is rare, right?
Yes.
And basically, if you have been at a company for 15 years, like many of the farmers people, and you're not an actuary, chances are that you are being paid significantly less than you are worth in the very, very competitive insurance market. And,
Probably,
and there are
probably
reasons
true.
for that. Some of them good, some of them bad. But basically, chances are you will land in a better place.
Yeah.
And also, you have learned a ton, and you have learned a ton about yourself in the time that you've been there. So you're going to do a much better job of finding the right fit.
Yes.
And especially, one thing that I love to talk about is the difference between your first layoff, where you literally had to move from Philly to Connecticut,
Yep.
to your last layoff, where in the new remote world, there was no need to move.
Right.
Right. And that is the new world that most insurance professionals are living in. Companies are in denial, but that's the new world. So yeah, tell me a little bit about that, about how this last layoff was different because of not having to move.
It was different for a lot of reasons, because I was, first off, my son was an adult and had his own job, and and I was more prepared because I've been through things before, so I had more cushion to go back on. But it was also different because of the remote possibilities, and I could broaden my field and horizon, like basically globally. Like, if someone was open to a remote role and and I was willing to work like hours that are in Europe, okay, I'm not moving. Therefore, it was it just sort of opened me up geographically, and it meant I didn't have to move, which is good, which is a huge economic savings, but also just frankly a quality of life savings for me. And I know some people can't work, their lifestyle or whatever doesn't intrinsically allow them to work remotely. I'm very blessed by that. I realize I'm very lucky in all of that. But it just kind of meant it just opened up way more opportunities. I mean, I'm in Connecticut, which is the insurance capital of the world, yet I was talking about remote opportunities in Ohio and other states, and they're like, "Yeah, you don't need to move. You're good." And the companies that wanted me to move, I just said no, thank you. And it didn't really seem to limit in my case, and I am lucky. In my case, it certainly didn't limit things a little as much as I was anticipating. I wasn't working with you, but working with other recruiters who had jobs, and they were like, "Hey, no, you're good. You're fine. Don't worry about it." So to your point that, the industry is definitely moving more remote, which does open things up a lot. So yeah, it was like that, and it was encouraging like that too, because you got to see another whole set of the industry out there that you wouldn't otherwise normally get a chance to interact with at all, and different company cultures and things. And to your point of, getting laid off is, I always say one of my skills is I can make lemonade out of lemons, right? I don't like getting lemons thrown at me, right? Right? But I can make a good thing out of that. Okay. And when the layoffs happen, I've learned that this is an opportunity, right? And I will sit down in an old-fashioned way, right, with pencil and paper and draw a line down the middle of the paper and go, on one side, what do I want in a job? And the other side, what don't I want in a job? And that helps me in that job search part of it, but also helps me in some ways emotionally cleanse a little bit to say, yeah, the last job did this, and yeah, I don't want to see that anymore. Yeah, oh man, that I do not want to see that anymore. Um, and and other things are like, yeah, no, past experience or whatever. Yeah, no, I'd like to see this. I'd like to try this. That kind of a thing. So it acted for me as a hinge point. And one of the things I think, and sort of advice to people that are looking, and you in your video you mentioned this. I think you mentioned this or talked about that, alluded to this, is your full-time job is now finding a job, right? And
Huge.
right. And but the way I did it and the way I've done it is I allocate a certain amount of time and I say from what is it 9 to 3 or something like that. That's what I'm doing. And then after that, okay, I'm done my job and now I've got to, you know, time box it out. It's not right.
Don't wallow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't obsess.
Right.
There's only so many jobs
Yes.
that you can apply to in any given day.
Right.
Right. Like you're gonna have at some point. Number one, you become sloppy
Yes.
in your applications because you're tired. And number two, at some point, you're gonna have to wait to see what opens up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. What's not posted yet that will be posted tomorrow.
Exactly.
And once you get the new job, you will likely go, oh, where did all that time go?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like I didn't work for 5 months. I didn't work for 6 months. Why did I not take advantage of that to take up gardening or whatever?
Oh my
whatever
God.
it is
So
that you
yeah.
love?
Between one set of layoffs, my son was in going into his senior year of high school, and I was looking for a job, found a job, and I said, I'm not going to start for a month, right? And they're like, well, why? I'm like, well, this is my last. It was going to be August, right? And this is my last
Fantastic.
summer with my son. Really, let's be realistic. He's looking for colleges, and we can go on some trips and things like that. Family, do the college search, but spend time with my kid. And to your point, it was kind of really crazy because it was like looking for a job. Oh, I've got the job. I'm starting in a month. What? I've got all this free time all of a sudden. Like, where did this come from? And, I still remember the one day it was like, oh, Dad, the latest Marvel movie has come out. When do you want to go? I'm like, well, when do you want to go? I got nothing. Let's go. So it was a really good time. And I know not everyone can do that, but, sort of take advantage of the moment, so to speak. So yeah. But I always viewed the job search as a process, and you're managing that process. So it's kind of finding jobs that you like, applying for them, right? Getting that first interview, probably a phone interview with an HR person, getting the second interview, maybe getting that third in-person interview, and then getting the offer. And then I look at it and I'm like, how am I and every job I tracked, everything I applied for, I tracked. I'm an actuary on a spreadsheet, right? And like I'm managing that process. And every day I would at dinner kind of report out to my wife, right? Okay, this one I moved these 3 things along. This one I moved these 3 things along. I started these 2, and it kind of helped me in a way of kind of managing that time because it was also so freeform and keeping track of things like which resume did I send to which company.
It's a fantastic idea.
And all
I
of that.
track applications on an Excel file. I love the idea of report it to your spouse at the end of the day, because that gives you a fake deadline, so to speak, which can be really helpful on projects where you don't have anybody looking over your shoulder. It gives you some accountability.
Yeah.
Even though ultimately it's to yourself, making it your spouse makes a lot of sense. And one piece of advice that was not the case at your first downsizing back in 2002, but was the case at the last one, is back in the early 2000s, late 90s, companies didn't use applicant tracking systems the way that they use them today. So basically, if you applied to a job at X company and they rejected you without an interview, it was a fair guess that company didn't want you right now. Today, that's not the case. I love to tell the story of how I got rejected by Liberty Mutual 41 times over a 5-month period for the same kind of jobs. It wasn't like I was applying to everything. I was applying to commercial underwriting and to sales management roles. And I had a background in both a little bit. And geographically, I was fairly open-minded, but anyway, I got rejected 41 times over a 5-month period without a phone call, and then I got hired on application 42. So it's so silly, right?
Yeah.
But it really illuminated how bad we are at hiring. It's not Liberty. It's
oh yeah,
corporate
no,
world,
it's
especially
everybody.
insurance.
It's everybody.
One thing I'm really curious about. So when the State Farm layoffs happened back in 2018, and now with the farmers layoffs, I'm seeing the same thing, which is a lot of people who thought they would be with the company forever, who had not built a network beyond. So I used to call it State Farm disease, which is a 6-page resume and 122 connections on LinkedIn after 15 years. And I see that Farmers has the same connections problem. So basically what I'm curious about is, after your first layoff, did your network help? And did that lead you to actively grow your network for the rest of your career?
Yes and yes. And just to kind of go back just a little bit to finish off the management process thing, reporting back to my spouse, it actually did two things from an emotional standpoint for me. One is it emphasized that I'd accomplished something during the day. Right? I'd actually move something from A to B. Like, that feels like an accomplishment. And two, it kept my spouse informed of what the hell was going on, which is important in a relationship, right? At least for me. But yeah, no, when the layoff happened, right, I didn't have as many. I had some connections outside, but I didn't have many. And all of a sudden it ballooned, right? Because everyone got a job someplace else. And then they moved, and then again they moved again, right? So I got all these connections all over the place, and it really did help, to just try and build that network of people that helped me, and also I will say there's the downside of it, right? Of we all experience this, and I don't know if you have. I know I have. I've talked to a lot of people that have had this experience of, that when something like that happens, suddenly some people stop taking your calls. And it was like some people who you thought would be helping you. And, I noticed that. And then there were also a lot of people that helped me that I had no thought at all I didn't even consider talking to sometimes, because I'm like, oh, they don't know me that well or whatever. And I remember one, and it was they were like, called me, like I got laid off from another place, and they called me and they said, Dave, how can I help you? Send me your resume. Like, I don't know if we've got anything, but I'm going to float this, And I'm like, wow, I haven't talked to you in a while. Like, okay, and it's amazing who comes out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love the way that you're putting that, and I think that it is very important to realize, and especially those of you younger in your career, maybe in your first job, and you're listening to this even though you haven't been affected by a layoff, your work friends are your work friends. There's no guarantee that they're your real friends. You find out whether they're your real friends once you no longer work together. Mm-hmm. Some of them are. some of them are not, and that's fine. And I take very few things personally. One of the few things that I take personally is when somebody that I work with that I like deletes me after we no longer work together.
Yeah.
Right? Because it makes it clear, I like them, they didn't actually like me. So like I try not to take it personally, but I kind of do. And I've only noticed it. I was gonna say it's only happened a couple times in my career. I'm sure it's happened more. I've only noticed it a couple times in my career, and they did sting. But the research says that most people find the jobs not through mad application to everything, which I do recommend and apply to everything.
Oh yeah.
But likely you're gonna find a role through your network.
Yes.
And the most interesting part is the research says that it won't necessarily be your very, very close connections.
Right.
There is great power to weak links. Mm-hmm. There is great power to being a positive, knowledgeable personal brand within the industry. Mm-hmm. And that connects you with people like myself, people like Jacob Galecki, people like Polikov, people, and I happen to name some recruiters, but basically it connects you to people who are passionate about our industry, who are likely to be more than happy to help you, even if they don't know you well, because that's just their nature. Right?
Yeah.
They're connectors.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
So take advantage of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And grow your network.
Yeah, absolutely. Grow your network, and if you have the opportunity, to help somebody, I would obviously say please do that. It only puts good karma out there, first off, and secondly, sometimes help is like I've talked to people, and like. Two things. One, I've talked to people looking for a job, and I always say, like, I might have a job. Like, the person you're talking to might not have a job, but the person they're talking to, or they're like 2 or 3 connections down the road, might have a job.
Exactly.
So don't think of any individual conversation as transactional. Think of it as a bit of relationship and all of that. And relationships are 2 ways, right? They might need your help at some point too. Boy, I was going with something I forgot. It's called old age. It's called old age.
I'm 40, and it happens to me a lot. On my side, it's called ADHD, and sometimes lack of sleep or abuse of caffeine.
Yes. Yes.
So, one thing that I'm wondering about, and if you do remember what you wanted to talk about, feel free to
That's fine.
guide me in that direction. But I'm wondering. So, it is hard to negotiate salary from a position of strength if you're currently unemployed. Psychologically, it's hard because you don't want to talk yourself out of the job. My approach to that is do your research, talk to people like Tony, talk to other recruiters, do your research on salary.com, etc., to find out how much the role should pay, and then ask for a number that properly pays you for your experience. Don't undersell yourself.
No, that's true.
Just because because you're currently in between jobs. So I'm wondering how you handled that piece during your own transitions. How did you handle how much to ask for at the next interview?
That's a good question. I've talked to recruiters. I get a sense of what's sort of out there and fair in the industry, and what I feel I'm worth. I always get to the answer to that question is somewhat of, because everyone's financial situation and family situation is different, right? What might be, someone might think is an unfair offer that someone else might go, I'll take that because I just want this process to end, right? And I completely understand that. There's the psychological pain of going through this, and you just want finality and closure, and that is worth something. Don't cut yourself short. That's worth something. I think one thing to think about is when you get to the offer stage, when they've given you an offer, a company is generally completely committed, right? I've been a hiring manager, and you get to the hiring stage, and you're like, I've been interviewing for like freaking 5, 6 months. I finally found the person. Here's the offer. And if if the person doesn't come back with something like they want it doubled or something, they want something that is reasonable. And most jobs are posted with a range, right? Now, if you're coming in at the top and they hand you the top of the range, there's probably not a lot of room, right? Right? But if you're like in the middle of the range, there's probably some room, and you can sit there and go, well, I really like this. I'm very positive. I've said, I talk to people. I'm really positively inclined. I really like the company. I like this. I like this. I like this. And in one instance, I was, like, hey, in my case, there was bonus and salary, and I said, could you just I didn't kind of like the salary number as much. And I was like, could you just shift some money from bonus to salary? It's the same net for you. But for me, it was like more guarantee, right? So I was like, and that makes it more palatable. And I wasn't like shifting a lot. It was just a little. And I was like, and they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, okay, fine, cool. Done. Bottom line, we're done. And you got to go what you're comfortable with, but also remember that as a recruiter, this, right? Compensation is not just salary; it's bonus, which is subjective. That's a subjective part of the money, right? If the company decides that they're not doing well, nobody gets a bonus. For those of you that have come into the space after 2007 and 8, the financial crisis, when lots of people didn't get bonuses. But it's also healthcare plans. It's also vacation, that kind of stuff. There's maternity and paternity benefits. There's adoption benefits. All those kinds of things play into it as well. So you have to look at the package as a whole for you and all of that, how much travel there is.
You talked about negotiating, and in my experience, and the theory basically says, HR almost expects you to negotiate maybe 10%. So my recommendation generally, if you are dealing directly with the company, not through a third party recruiter, if you're dealing directly with the company, get the offer. Say thank you for the offer. Let me discuss it with my spouse.
Yeah, that's a great.
Get back to them and respectfully ask for 10% more. And the reasoning should not be, I need 10% more because I have 3 kids.
No.
The reasoning needs to be based on what I bring to the table, based on what I'm going to do for you, based on the fact that I've always been a high performer. Ask for salary offer times 1.1.
Yep.
Now, what's going to happen? They're probably not going to say yes right away. They have to go get authority from their higher ups, and basically 3 things might happen. They'll come back with what you're asking for. They'll come back with somewhere in the middle, or they'll tell you that's the top of the pay band. Yep. That's all they can do, and then you decide. But you're not in insurance. You are not going to lose an offer for asking for 10% more. Now, if you're going through a third-party recruiter, you should have this conversation with the recruiter up front.
Yes.
Rather than the last second, because we'll negotiate for you.
Yes.
We'll make sure. Right. And by the way, third-party recruiters largely get paid on commission, a percentage of your salary. So while we work for the carrier or for the company, we are incentivized in such a way that we want to make sure that you get paid properly, and also we guarantee that you'll stay there for a period of time.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that you get paid enough that you'll stay there for a period of time, right? Yep. We want our client to be happy for the long term.
I will say, if you're entry level, that's a different. There's a different thing here. What you're talking about is as people go up that career path and ladder. If you're entry level, it is kind of like you kind of take it or leave whatever the company gives you because entry level is. I just want to depending on who's watching the video.
No.
Yeah.
And given my audience, we do have a lot of entry level people watching, so it's a very good call out. The other thing that I would say is before I became a recruiter, I've read a lot of advice saying that you are free to ask the recruiter when they ask you how much are you looking for, you can answer what is the budget, right? And I have never done this myself. It seemed disrespectful. Now that I'm a recruiter, I get asked all the time. It's perfectly fine. Like, quite honestly,
Yeah.
like our process is in our case is asking you how much are you looking for, but if you turn it around and you ask me what is the budget, I will tell you. In fact, every posting for one of our jobs has the band, so you can see if I'm lying to you,
Right.
which I'm not. But yes, it feel
Well,
free
and
feel free to ask
and
for,
some
for
states,
what the budget
in
is.
some states like New York or New York City at least, but in New York, it's actually illegal to ask you what you currently make.
Yes, California, New York,
Yeah.
Philadelphia, and I really hope that eventually it's the whole country.
Yeah.
Because it's a DEI issue.
Yeah.
Women and minorities start their career making less. They get lower offers to begin with, and they're much less likely to negotiate than white men.
Right.
And that salary follows them for life.
Right.
So one way to break that is and to pay people appropriately to the productivity they have over their careers is to not ask you how much you used to
Yep.
make, because the reality is I care. You said something really important, which I think most people who are going through their first major insurance job search do not realize, which is because of how difficult it is to hire insurance people, and because of how slow and methodical, right? The hiring manager wants to put this to bed.
Oh, God.
This opening has probably been open for months. Their people are probably overworked for the last several months. So, like, they are very motivated. If they've chosen
If I'm a hiring manager, so I'm from the hiring manager's side, right? And anyone who's looking that's been a hiring manager, hopefully you can agree with this or tell me I'm wrong. But you've probably been getting resumes in the door for several months. You've had to spend the time to go through resumes. You've had to go through interviews because you might be interviewing, right? As you're job searching, you're like, oh, it's only a 45-minute interview. Yeah, but for the guy who's doing the interview, you're the sixth one or seventh one, right? So, it's like, okay, that's 7 or 8 hours out of the week because you've also got to prep for these things. Then you got to get together with everybody who also, the team that has also interviewed, because it's like probably like 2 or 3 other people who've also spent 7 or 8 hours interviewing candidates. And then you all get together in a meeting room for an hour or two and go, okay, how do we do this? And then you go up to your boss and go, I think I got the guy. And then you talk to the HR person and go, okay, is this the guy or not? Okay. And now we go through all this background, we do all this, not background checks, but do all this kind of stuff behind the scenes. And they go, okay, now we got to put an offer together. Okay, let's put an offer together. Like, and by the time you're sending the offer out, you're doing, I don't want to go through this again. Oh, dear God.
Yeah,
so you don't, so if
you've
you're
got an
interviewing,
actual
there's an
job.
emotional attachment to actually having you hired. There really is. And to get,
By the way,
go ahead. And I want to get back to a previous point.
I was going to say, by the way, the recruiter, if they're a third-party recruiter, they want to get paid.
Yeah.
If they're an in-house recruiter, they get measured.
Yeah.
On
Throughput.
how quickly they fill roles.
Throughput.
Exactly. So they want to close it.
Yeah. They get measured on throughput. Like they're a lot of times they're on their performance review is kind of like, you've had these positions open for like 7 months. But one of the things I wanted to get to was something I talked earlier about that I forgot, which was, when you're talking to people and you're networking, right? Obviously it's not transactional, it's always whatever, but there's a lot of support that I've gotten that isn't really straight, like get a job related. That was incredibly valuable to me. And that was like emotional support of just people sitting on a phone or having a beer with me or having lunch together and just, how you doing? You okay? How's it going? You all right? You know what? I got this. Lunch is on me. You'll pay it back. Don't worry about it. And I can't. I mean, I've been very blessed. I've said that a couple times, but I truly mean that. I've just got a long list of people, longer than I could thank in one thing, of people who have, you know, it's kind of just taking me aside and said, Dave, you need to get out of the house. Why don't we go out to lunch? You need to get out of the house, you know, and it's just really helped emotionally because it can drive you into a deep depression. Um, and,
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
and you find yourself having a cocktail every night, or maybe two or three, or, and that's not healthy, right? And sitting down with a friend of yours at lunch and just, talking about the football game and connecting and realizing that you're a human being outside of work. I think that's one of the big things with this is, particularly in the United States, is your personal self-worth and identification is through a job.
Hmm.
And when you lose that job, you lose that personal identification. I mean, what's the first thing you do at a social event, right? Oh, what do you do? And you're expecting to hear back, well, I'm an accountant, or I work at such and such a company, or I'm a this or that, or I've been at so and so for 30 years. And 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 you have to realize that you're way more than your job. And one of the other lessons I learned out of this was, you know, when I introduce myself anymore, and it's evolved over the years, but like I'm I am an actuary, but I also teach Taekwondo. I also run a blog called emergingally.com. I actually write. I collect music. I collect baseballs. Like I'm way more, like I'm a husband and a father. I'm way more than a job, right? Job's part of me, that's for sure, but I'm way more than that. And I think it's very easy to get super focused in on, especially in these times of, oh my God, a tornado's hit my job. But, um, you know, try and pull yourself out and look at all the wonderful things that you do. I'm sure, you golf, or you're in club soccer, or, you have a fantasy. I mean, I have a fantasy football league I've been in for 19 years. I don't think they're going to, my guys who are watching this don't know how much they've helped me by just simply like, yeah, we're going to have the draft. And I like show up at the draft, like I haven't done any homework. Like, and
So
they make fun of me, and that's okay. You know,
we're almost out of time,
I'm
but I
sorry,
am
I'm
very
blabbering
curious.
on.
No, no, no worries. No, no, no. It's been fantastic. I've always wondered, are actuaries fantastically good at fantasy sports because they're so good with numbers?
Um, I'm not, but I can't tell you because my league is entirely actuaries.
So,
So
so basically, none of you have any idea how you rank against the general population
no,
of fantasy football players.
no, we don't. We have no
Okay,
idea. We literally have no idea because it's literally a league of entirely actuaries, which is
that is
as geeky as it
fantastic.
gets.
I would imagine. I would imagine. Dave, this has been wonderful. I do have another podcast here in 5 minutes.
No, that's fine. Thank you for taking the
For
time.
the listeners, yeah. Oh, my pleasure. This was really fantastic. For the listeners, if you made it this far to the end, both of our LinkedIn's are tagged. And not only the two of us are happy to chat with you,
Yes.
but there are so many other people in insurance that are more than happy. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to your network. Uh, the, don't be. This is not your fault,
No,
right?
it's not.
I feel like the Matt Damon thing.
Yeah,
It's not your fault.
you're
Right?
right.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, if I can help
It's
anybody,
not your fault.
please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to do what I can to help.
Oh, and one thing I should have said long ago. One of the questions that I get all the time from downsized people is, should I collect unemployment?
Yeah.
Yes, you paid for it, right? You and your
Yes.
employer have been paying a premium for this insurance, even if, and it usually comes from people who are politically conservative and don't like unemployment. You've paid into it for years. collect unemployment. Even if you have good savings, this is something you have paid for years and years and years and years. This is what it's for.
Unemployment insurance. You have home insurance in case a tree hits your house. A tree just hit your job.
Yeah, there is no embarrassment to it, but people worry like, can future employers see that I collected on insurance? No, they cannot.
No idea.
Okay, I've got to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely great chatting with you. Stay in touch.
You too. Bye. Take care.
And actually, hold on. Let me stop recording.